Now, for anybody interested, the letters that are on that Texas right there say, humbly invoking the blessings of Almighty God, because those are the first words of our Texas Constitution, and I really love that. So I thought I would throw that in there. And Proposition 1. This adds number 36 to the Texas Article 1, which is essentially the Bill of Rights in the Texas Constitution. Essentially, it provides it prevents municipal overregulation, in particular in cases where annexation has overrun agricultural operations. City authorities really vehemently objected the words imminent danger and clear and convincing evidence before being required before a local government could intercede or restrict with an activity. These words are in the actual legislation, although you're not seeing them in the ballot language. And they were actually added during the committee process. The cities argued that this is too high a burden of proof and will postpone action until it's too late. But those of us who are big on private property rights are loving this. So number 1 is something I think most people would agree is a good thing, protecting the right to engage in activity on your own private property, just enshrining it more securely in our Texas Constitution. Next, Proposition 2. This provides local governments the authority to give this tax exemption for daycare properties if the cities or local entities choose to do so. It's not mandatory. It's not going to be automatic. They have the option. And it allows a 50% or more exemption of property taxes by counties and cities on the appraised value of property used as a child care facility. There are 2 qualifications for a facility. A facility must have 20% of its enrolled children receiving subsidized child care services, which is administered by the Texas Workforce Commission. And the facility must be participating in the Texas Workforce Commission's Rising Star program. So the idea behind this one was to possibly make more child care available and to make it more affordable, presuming that then the tax break that they are getting would be passed along to us as parents. Proposition 3. I love this one. The constitutional amendment prohibiting the imposition of an individual wealth or net worth tax, including a tax on the difference between the assets and liabilities of an individual or family. So the government would not be allowed to tax people based on the value of their assets or their overall net worth. Now, this one barely passed in both the House, and it barely passed in the Senate actually as well. This ensures that future legislatures cannot impose an individual wealth or net worth tax without at least, again, first getting voters' approval via another statewide vote, like the one we are taking now, to prevent it. I found this part amusing. Critics said of this that this could limit the ability of future legislatures to address the needs of Texans, which may be different in the future. In other words, don't limit their options to tax as much as they can on as many things as they can. But I think a lot of us can agree that a restriction on taxes is a good thing. Proposition 4, the one we've all been waiting for, property tax relief. Now, I know that you can all read this on the screen, hopefully, and it's on residence homesteads from $40,000 to $100,000 now. So there used to be a $40,000, now it's up to $100,000, which is a wonderful thing. And I love that they've added a 4-year term of office for various members of the board of directors on appraisal boards. I think that's a great thing. They have to be answerable to the voters. Now, Proposition 4 allows some funds to be allocated for property tax relief without being restricted by the existing spending limits. So the money being used for this does not count against the legislature's constitutionally mandated spending limit. And that's what the little sticker up in the corner means. When you see this, you'll know that, oh, this doesn't count against their spending cap. And there's quite a few of those. So a lot of these they are getting around the spending limit that is put in the Constitution of our state. Now, Representative Steve Allison acknowledged that this tax break isn't necessarily really wow, but it is the best amount that they were able to drag across the finish line for us and get passed. And there's been $12.7 billion allocated for this. Proposition 5. This one is rather interesting. This is making changes to the Texas University Fund, which already exists. It renames it to the National Research University Fund, and it comes out of the Economic Stabilization Fund, which is also known as the Rainy Day Fund. They always love to talk about how to spend that. We're very fortunate as a state to have one. University of Texas and Texas A&M are excluded from receiving money from the fund because they already receive research funds from the Permanent University Fund. And the schools which will receive this are Texas Tech, University of Houston, University of North Texas, and Texas State University. Those will be recipients of this fund. And allocations to the fund and dividends, investment earnings, all of those will add to it, and it can have up to 2% annual growth. And I wrote down that the initial amount allocated is $3.5 billion from the general fund. But how that does not violate the $100 million cap on this, I'm not sure. So that's iffy there. I'm not swearing by that number. But the Higher Education Coordinating Board is going to determine the qualifications and what institutions are eligible. But I just listed for you the ones that are initially named in the bill. So that's Proposition 5. Tony Ann, if I'm going too fast or too slow, just give me a thumbs up, thumbs down.
Yeah, I think you can, yeah, because you've got the half hour, so I think you're fine. Thank you.
Excellent. All right, Proposition 6. Now, this one is obviously important, near and dear to everybody's heart, because we can't function without water. That's a critical infrastructure need. And this supports water-related projects. $1 billion has been allocated for it. And it will be used for water projects such as developing new water supplies. And the repairs that it will provide for are in particular in rural areas. And it has included in it promoting awareness, which means that they are going to pay for a program. I don't know if it's going to be promoting awareness that you should not leave the hose on or turn off the tap when you brush your teeth, but whatever they think is necessary for promoting awareness about the water in Texas. And at least for the first time this is allocated, at least 25% of it minimum must be allocated towards developing new water sources. And this is another fund which will not be subject to the state's regular spending limits. They put a lot of these in these propositions that are outside of the cap that they have to stay under. Critics say this fund will be should be directed more so towards water reuse. My first thought about that is ew. And nature-based solutions. I don't know what they mean by that. But other critics say this fund isn't nearly enough to meet our coming water supply needs. And it is a fact that we can't live without water, and our population is increasing exponentially. So we really have to take water seriously. Proposition 7. So again, this is another one that money appropriated by the state legislature for this fund would be excluded from the state's appropriation limit. So they're getting around their spending cap. And these funds would have to be allocated to eligible projects in each region of the state in proportion to that region's load share within an electric power grid. This is the energy proposition, Prop 7. And we all remember what Winter Storm Uri was like when we all had blackouts and that ERCOT couldn't handle it. So we don't want that to happen ever again. So this would go a long way towards preventing that. And the main idea is to improve electric grid reliability quickly. And when I read about this bill, I will say the documentary Grid Down, Power Up came to mind. So infrastructure of water and power are two of the things that are on the constitutional amendments. And $5 billion has been appropriated for this just initially, as this is one of the ones that I've labeled as in perpetuity. It never goes away. So there's going to be a new appropriations for it every session. And it will be a continuing source. Proposition 8. This is the one creating a broadband infrastructure fund to expand high-speed broadband access. And I was told by Representative Steve Allison that this is particularly for rural areas and areas that are just short of services otherwise, such as south side of San Antonio, people who aren't going to get broadband otherwise installed. $1.5 billion has been allocated for this first round. And this is unique on the ballot among all the special funds because this one actually has an expiration date. And it's September of 2035. But it can be extended for 10 years if 2/3 of the Texas House votes to continue it. So this is the one that they did put an end date on. And it will be managed by the state comptroller, and it can be combined with federal funds. And there are federal funds which have a like purpose, and they can be combined with that. And some of the examples of the reasons given for having this are telehealth for remote areas where healthcare facilities and practitioners are in short supply. Also for next generation 911 services. So things that we don't think about that we already have in big cities, they don't have. And there were some quite legitimate points made in opposition to this during the hearings. For example, that the fund should be focusing on installing fiber optic broadband instead of wireless, because that's more reliable. To me, the most compelling argument against this made during the hearings was using taxpayer money to fund broadband expansion is way outside the scope of limited government. But you can make your own decision on what you base your votes on in this case. Proposition 9. Now, in most rooms that you go into, if there's any teachers in the room, it'll break out in massive applause. This is a very popular one among all of our educators, especially retired ones. This does not apply to current teachers. This is only for teachers who are already retired. And the amendment permits the legislature to grant a cost of living adjustment and to retirees in TRS, which is the Texas retirement system or teacher retirement system, and allocates funds from the general fund to support these adjustments. Now, this is another new special fund that is exempt from their spending cap, from the constitutionally set cap on the legislature's spending, just FYI. And the TRS, the teacher retirement system, is a state-provided retirement benefits for persons employed in public schools, colleges, and universities supported wholly or partially by the state. So in other words, if you're listening carefully, it's not exclusively for retired teachers, but also for retired school employees, from secretaries to custodians to lunch ladies. It's not limited to teachers. And the money for cost of living adjustment, or COLA, will not be counted towards the state spending limit, as I said. This will be allotted on a staggered scale based upon how long a teacher or someone has been retired. Teachers retired the longest will receive the highest amount, a $7,500 increase. And if you think about that added onto an annual cost of living, how much, that's not that much. One consideration, teachers who retired in the 1980s or 90s did not make nearly as much as a teacher who's just starting today in their very first year. And yet the amount they receive for retirement is still based on that amount back the year they retired, with no cost of living adjustment having been made in many, many years. Regardless of whether the constitutional amendment passes, teachers will receive a 13th check as passed by the legislature this year, because that part is in the enabling legislation and not the constitutional amendment. So they're going to get that no matter what, whether it passes or not. And this is the one that passed unanimously in the Senate, and in the House. Everybody voted for it except for one person who didn't vote, but there were 0 votes against it. So next up, Proposition 10. And I'm presuming that you guys are reading the language here on the screen as I've provided, or have seen the language of these propositions, so that I'm not going to read it for you verbatim. I'd put you all to sleep.
I think that's a good thing.
Right. Proposition 10. Exempting from taxation inventory of medical supplies. The impetus behind this measure is to induce medical supply companies to keep their medical products in the state, so that in the case of emergency or disaster, these supplies would be readily available and not subject to supply chain delays. I don't know if any of you have experienced it, but for a while after COVID, we had supply chain issues, or you just couldn't get certain equipment or medicine for a while there. So this is to address that. Clearly, we'd all like to see our dependence upon foreign countries for our medical needs reduced. Currently, it's not in companies' benefit to store inventory in the state because they get taxed on them. So they don't. They only bring in as much as they are going to distribute already. They don't stockpile it here per se. And this will apply to a very wide variety of inventory and equipment. And one thing that you might not think of that it's also applying to, though, is research facilities. And to bring medical research facilities into the state, encourage them to be here instead of abroad. Next, Proposition 11. This is the one that everyone's like, why am I voting on El Paso? And the reason is because this is, the whole state needs to vote on this El Paso measure, because taxing entities in Texas, any entity allowed to issue bonds or to tax residents, must be established by the state constitution. So it requires a Texas constitutional amendment for them to be able to create this taxing entity. And just FYI, the same El Paso measure failed in 2011. It did not pass for El Paso back in 2011 when they tried this same one. And the measure must pass by a simple majority statewide and in El Paso in order to take effect.
Oh.
So it requires us all. So don't just skip over the ones that seem, oh, that's someplace I don't live, I'm just going to skip that one. But the idea is for El Paso to have parks and recreational facilities, but so that they can levy bonds and taxes in order to pay for them. Proposition 12. The constitutional amendment providing for the abolition of the office of county treasurer in Galveston County. Now, this is another one that you might have gone, why am I voting on Galveston's treasurer? And again, this is a constitutionally established position, and it cannot be abolished without putting it to a vote of all Texans. And again, it has to pass a majority of counties. County treasurers, in case you don't know, are the custodians of all county funds and are responsible for distributing county funds according to the directives of the county commissioner's court. So they answer to the commissioner's court. And the last time any county treasurers were abolished was in 1987, because Tony Ann asked me that question. I made sure to find that out. It was in 1987, and 3 counties abolished their treasurers on the same ballot that year. It was Fayette, Gregg, and Nueces counties. And overall, 9 counties have abolished the treasurer position up to now, including Tarrant County, Collin County, El Paso County, and my own county of Bexar. And the measure passed by 68% or more in every case. The last county I didn't mention that has abolished their treasurer is B County. This measure must pass by a simple majority statewide and in Galveston County for approval. And I've been at meetings where I've heard opposition. The treasurers of Kendall and Comal counties oppose this proposition. They are concerned that this will lead to other county treasurers being eliminated in the future, and they strongly feel that their position is necessary. However, the position and the job roles of the county treasurer, for example, in Bexar County, are taken over by the tax assessor collector and the budget office of the county. Proposition 13. This one increases the mandatory retirement age for judges to 79. Actually, what it does, if you look at the language, is it increases the age range, but the maximum now allowable that this increases it to is 79. And so it changed it to from 75 to 79 instead of from 70 to 75. And one of the supporters of this measure were the Texas Trial Lawyers Association. And just as a little side note, Vermont has a mandatory retirement age for judges of 90.
Oh.
So they have some well-seasoned judges in Vermont. They also have Bernie, but we won't hold that against them. And there is one justice on the Supreme Court of Texas who is currently 74 years old. And finally, Proposition 14, and this has the same stickers as some of the other ones, in perpetuity, and it's exempt from the budget cap. In case you can't guess, the Centennial Parks Conservation Fund is named in honor of the 100th anniversary of Texas State Park System. And one reason for this new fund is the state's population has grown, and so has the demand for parks. I know that personally, the state park near me on a Saturday morning, you're not going to find a parking spot. Many people have found that in recent years, they must make reservations weeks or even months in advance to be able to get a picnic spot or a camping spot at a state park. So this is going to acquire, one aspect of this is it acquires new land to expand or add new parks. And one aspect of so you're like, oh, well, we already fund state parks. We already have state parks. Why would we need a whole new fund for it? Well, one aspect of the creation of this fund is it can keep donations for parks by companies or citizens out of the general fund. If donations meant for parks go into the general fund, then the next time the legislature meets, they could redirect the funds anywhere, but I'm sure they'd never do that. So this last one is yet another fund which falls outside the mandatory spending cap of the legislature. So a last few notes here. So propositions 5, 6, 7, 8, and 14 all are creating new funds which are outside of the mandatory spending cap that we put on our legislature. Now, we can talk about how DC needs one of those, but that's another issue. So these don't count against, so they can spend up to their cap and then these funds as well. It doesn't count against the limit. Representative Steve Allison says that the ones you really, really want to pay attention to are 4, 6, 7, and 9. He considers those the most critical. The property tax relief, the water fund, the energy fund, and the teacher retirement increase. Like if there's some that you want to talk about in day-to-day conversations that to have people know about, those are the 4. And most of the propositions, except for the one I mentioned, have no set expiration. So that's why I had my little label on there of in perpetuity. If these pass, we're going to have them forever. And so the legislature will be allocating tax dollars towards them forever. And so with that, you now know more about these than most Texas voters who will press the flashing vote button on their ES&S machine on November 7th. And with that, I turn it back to you, Tony Ann.
Well, Karen, thank you for taking that time and putting this together and giving us some insight. I'm sure that we will, there are some questions as I see them coming through, but that doesn't, I'm not sure that we're going to have the answers to all these questions, but I will say that we will, at least that starts the thought process and they can do research in making this happen. So Karen, you've done an excellent job, and I really do appreciate you sharing this information with all of us. Great job. But don't go away. You have to get on the hot seat, or somebody will help you out too. But let's go on to our next guest speaker today, and I think she is probably new to many of you. Donna Davidson had introduced Caroline Welton to me, and I was really excited that we were going to have her come on and share a legislative update, and because so many laws have passed on or went into effect on September 1st. And so she, did something last night. She did a presentation in Austin. So we appreciate you doing last night and then coming on today. She is with the TPPF, Texas Public Policy Foundation. She actually was an intern there, and now she works for them, which is very exciting. And so she has a love for policy and for local government. And so she's working closely with them and many surrounding areas. And she's a native Texan. And so if you want to learn more about her, you can go to the TPPF website and check her out there. But Caroline, we're so excited to have you join us today and be a part of our Friday morning Zooms that we have. So we'd like you to be able to share some of the information that you've gathered, and then maybe give us direction on where we can find this also on your website, on the website. So welcome, and there you go.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tony Ann. I appreciate that. Like Tony said, I'm Caroline Welton. I'm with the Texas Public Policy Foundation. I'm so excited to be with y'all this morning to chat about some highlights of the 88th legislature. A little bit about me, like Tony Ann said, I'm a born and raised Texan. I'm a Hillsdale College alum who worked for the Longhorns any day. And of course, I'm a policy nerd over at the Texas Public Policy Foundation, where I manage our healthcare policy initiative. Texas Public Policy Foundation, y'all might know a little bit, is a nonprofit, nonpartisan think tank based in the heart of Austin, about 2 blocks down from the Capitol. We seek to provide effective research-backed policy solutions to the problems which most impact the 30 million plus people in the great state of Texas, and to work with any and all legislators to make Texas the freest place in the world to live, work, and raise a family. Every legislative session has its ups and downs, as y'all know. I'm gonna give y'all a highlight of 3 super important conservative wins, which all went into effect September 1. Which highlight how we are winning both in traditional conservative battles, such as spending and regulatory reform, which we've been fighting for decades, and also on the vanguard of the culture war, without which there's no one to help lead the other battles. So first off, I know we touched on this a little bit in the constitutional amendments. I'm going to talk some about our historic property tax relief and how we got here. So y'all probably are aware that the budget in the Texas legislature is the only passed item. If the House and the Senate pass the budget, that's the only thing they do. They can still go home having done their job. From 2004 to 2015, our budget grew by about 12% every year. However, since 2015, using what we call the conservative Texas budget, it's only grown by about 5.5% every biennium. This means that we are having surpluses. We're paying into our rainy day fund, about 11.6 billion in the rainy day fund right now. Our budget this past year might have been a little bit inflated. We do have federal inflation going on, but the conservative Texas budget with a formula of increasing no more than population growth times inflation was codified into statute in 2019 thanks to Senator Hancock. And this means that we've had budget surpluses for several years now, which enabled the legislature to provide historic property tax relief. So this tax relief, the main mechanism, which is in the amendments, the part that you'll see immediately allots 5.3 billion toward increasing the homestead exemption, which is the amount of a home value that can't be taxed to pay for the public schools. Increases this up from $40,000 to $100,000. So you'll be able to tell that'll be in your wallet. This new exemption combined with school tax cuts is estimated to save taxpayers about an average of $1,300 a year in property taxes. Second part of the plan is a first ever 20% cap on appraisal increases for properties valued at 5 million or lower that are not considered homesteads. So this will be things like second homes, rental houses, commercial, retail, business properties. This is super important because it allows Texas businesses to continue to prosper, create a vibrant state economy for us all to live and grow in. And lastly, including more than 5 billion approved 4 years ago when appraisals were capped last, the legislation also allocates nearly 12.6 billion to reduce the school property tax rate by 12.7 cents per $100 of valuation for all homeowners and business properties across the board. So this shifts a portion of what we call the maintenance and operation tax, which is the main part of a school's budget, shifts it over from this local level to being funded from the state budget. So if Texas continues this Texas miracle formula of following a conservative Texas budget, this formula of increasing no more than population increase times inflation and keeping regulations low to create a business-friendly environment where business and economy will grow and people will come here, providing a surplus, this sets us on a pathway toward continuing to buy down that M&O tax year by year, gradually shifting away from funding schools by property tax. Buying down the M&O toward a goal of eliminating property tax is the best long-term solution for property tax. Second highlight that I'm going to talk about is banning gender modification of minors. Raising kids has never been easy, but in our topsy-turvy world, it's new in unforeseen ways. Some folks are determined to ignore natural differences between boys and girls and are spreading this narrative, which has unfortunately reached even our good Texas schools, that only a kid in their heart can really know which gender they are. That's why in this session, under the great leadership of Representative Dr. Olivison and Senator Campbell, the legislature passed Senate Bill 14, which bans gender modification of minors for the purposes of treating gender dysphoria and the like. This is a new issue for the conservative movement. I sure didn't see this coming up, hearing about the issues that conservatives were fighting about. So even as we keep fighting for smaller government, less spending, we also need to be fighting the radical left on their own ground and protecting our own. So don't forget to count that as win. Speaking of smaller government, though, I want to talk to y'all a little bit about local governments. So if y'all have ever tuned into Austin City Council, any of the other bigger cities around here tend to be a little egregious in this respect. You tune in, you look at them, you're probably not gonna think they're doing a great job. They're following the will of the people and doing what I want them to do. This is because all too often local governments do a lot of crazy stuff, way more than the proper ends of local government authority granted to them by the state of Texas. So local government's authority, of course, comes ultimately from the people, but it comes from the people of the state who then create these cities. So the cities don't come together and make up a state like the states come together and make it the federal government, but rather the cities are creatures of the state. So-called local control fails to recognize that municipalities are creatures of the state, not constituent parts of it. This local overreach is what the Regulatory Consistency Act, this is HB 2127, affectionately dubbed the Death Star Bill, seeks to address. This law restores sovereignty of the state of Texas in a couple of preempted areas of regulatory statute. So in other words, if the state of Texas has a law on the book, so it's already state law, you're already supposed to be following this, local governments can't put ordinances into effect that contradict this law. They have to actually follow it. This bill seeks to eliminate the patchwork of regulations by local governments across the state. We see this in areas like building regulations, labor standards, and a couple of other areas. This will make Texas an even more business-friendly state by making our regulations more uniform. Businesses don't have to operate differently from city to city. Now, some of the city governments are not happy with this, and they are suing the state for all they're worth, claiming this will remove local ability to regulate necessary ends, such as water breaks for workers in the middle of an August heat wave, despite the fact the bill didn't go into effect until September, but you know. Only 2 cities in the state even had water break ordinances on the books, and we could not find any record of this being enforced. So this argument is a little silly. This is a huge step in the right direction. We obviously still want to be proactive at keeping local governments in their lane when it comes to green new nonsense and other woke items, but this is a massive win, which has been years in the making. So those are 3 big highlights from session looking backward. Highlight looking forward. As we celebrate these and other victories, there's still some strong conservative priorities which we're hoping will pass in the near future, including school choice. Schools are about education, and education is intended to form whole human beings, good citizens, members of families and communities who can think for themselves. But with only a third of 3rd graders reading and doing math at grade level, learning loss, which is not impossible to recover. If you don't know how to read by 3rd grade, you're probably not making that up. Some people are trying to train our good Texas teachers away from teaching and toward brainwashing. This goal of proper education sometimes seems distant, but we can turn this around by giving parents and students more options for good quality education. Governor Abbott has made well known his support of parental empowerment and educational choice, allowing parents to choose the very best type of education for their child's unique needs. The governor has toured the state with Mandy Drogan, talking to dozens of packed school auditoriums about which policies can best support parents, students, and teachers all across Texas in diverse and widespread communities. He has pledged to bring back the legislature in another special session to work on passing this strong priority. So as we come into October, keep an eye on the legislature, as this could very well be their next task. I am happy to take questions if y'all have any, but please do remember that the Texas Public Policy Foundation, and me by extension, is a nonpartisan entity, so we comment only on policy matters and not political matters or persons. Thank you.
Well, thank you. That was very informative, and thank you for sharing that information. And yes, I can see that there are a few questions for you. So, and hopefully you'll be able to answer them. So I'm going to turn it over to Bisa and Donna, and asking, they're going to be the ones that put you guys on the hot seat and see what we can do here. So go ahead. Who's taking? Is it Donna?
I'm actually gonna take a little bit of the lead on this. Yeah, you're welcome, Visa. So as we were going, so if I missed something, I am not Karen Marshall, okay? So I asked for grace in advance. I don't know how she does it. I had to go and try to copy questions so I could have them all together in a Word document, and I may have missed some. So if your question doesn't get asked, I wasn't picking on you. I was just trying to go as quickly as I could. So Karen, you're going to be first on the hot seat. We're going to go in prop order, I hope. I tried anyway. So one of the questions, and I didn't identify who, so sorry, I left out names. Could a person watching 2 or 3 children at home, prop 2, become tax exempt?
I'm afraid not, Kathy. I saw who that question was from. And I mentioned the qualifications that you have to have in order to, and remember, the county doesn't, and your municipality doesn't have to give you this break either. It's giving them the option. But in order to qualify, a facility has to have 20% of its enrolled children receiving subsidized childcare services, and the facility must already be registered in and participating in the Texas Workforce Commission's Rising Star program. So maybe if you manage to qualify yourself that way, but otherwise grandmas are probably out of luck.
How did you know it was a grandma question? Okay. Going on to prop 5. Can you say the names of the Texas colleges again for Proposition 5? Somebody was questioning which ones it was applicable to.
Oh, sure. Let's see. Those were Texas Tech, the University of Houston, the University of North Texas, UNT, and Texas State University. So right now, those are the ones named as recipients of this fund.
Okay, moving on to Prop 7. There was some discussion about the insufficiency of transmission lines to distribute the energy that was probably the problem this summer. The energy proposition doesn't appear to include energy distribution, just generation. Is that right?
Well, it does cover maintenance. So especially it's going to upgrade and modernize a lot of our facilities. That's the focus of this, to make it so that it's more reliable. So if it's not named, I would say that it's intended to, and if it doesn't, well, we can beat them over the head about it. But it is intended to cover all of those aspects that failed to get us our power in case of disaster.
Okay, moving on. Oh, this is still Prop 7. Prop 7 will use taxpayer funds with no cap to subsidize wind and solar, which are already subsidized by taxpayer funds, only now it's not subject to spending limits. My concern with cap exemption will lead to out of control government spending. Anybody concerned about this?
I very, very deliberately pointed that out because I know we have a lot of fiscal hawks on here and a lot of conservatives fiscally. So that is definitely a consideration because it's outside of their limits. So they can try to fund a bunch of stuff, keep it within their cap, and then say, oh, now we get to go put this in, because all of these new funds are outside of their limit. It doesn't count against them. And the other question was, oh, and wind and solar. So I double checked and it doesn't say renewable anywhere in the law. So it just says it's going to update, maintain and create new energy producing facilities. It doesn't say the method. So it does not say that it's enabling wind and solar. It very specifically leaves that out, but it also doesn't say it can't be, but hopefully the qualifications for the projects is going to eliminate that, because that was a hot topic during the debate about this proposition.
Okay, excellent, because you just answered the most recent question on green energy, so good. Moving on, let's go to Prop 9. So does Prop 9 create a new fund? The person asking the question said, I thought it moves money to TRS.
Okay. So Prop 9 actually again, this is another that is not, so the current thing is not going to count against the budget limit. And that's why I kind of qualified it as a separate fund, because again, this is, oh, this doesn't count. And meanwhile, the regular fund does fall within their spending limit. So this is kind of separate in that regards, that any funds that are allocated towards this don't count towards the cap. But but they are going through the teacher retirement system, which is included normally in the budget, if that makes sense. But in this case, these allocated funds do not count as part of the regular regular distribution and cap.
Okay, I think that answers the question. So we'll move to Prop 11. So there were, because this is the El Paso, okay, so there are kind of three questions. I'm just going to kind of combine them. So will the funds for Prop 11 come from El Paso residents, which of course, then don't they already have the power to issue bonds for Parks and Recreation, or is this why this has to be passed? And then will there be an audit and overseeing of monies spent under this if it does?
So this, they do not have a Parks and Recreation taxing entity currently. That's why they need to ask for permission in order to tax, in order to fund these items. And yes, it will only be paid for by El Paso residents. People who have property in El Paso are the ones who can be taxed. So they're going to be paying for their own taxes on parks and bonds that are going to be paying for parks. But this enables them to put together a bond package and put it before the voters in order to fund these things.
When you say the voters, you're talking about the El
Of El
Paso
Paso.
voters. Is
El
what you're
Paso
doing.
voters, right? We won't have to vote every time they want to pay for a park.
Right.
This is a one-time deal.
Okay, let's
I
move to
cover all of those?
proposition. You did, you
Okay.
did. I mean, the audit, I mean, it's up to them if they audit it. It's not like the constitutional amendment provides for the audit, correct?
Correct. It's subject to the same oversight and that all other bonds and taxing entities on local governments are subject to.
Thank
It's
you
not
for
created in
confirming
the
that.
law.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for confirming that. Now going to Proposition 13. Are there any competency tests or requirements for these judges?
I saw this is another one from Kathy, and no, you can't ask anybody if they're senile. The idea is that's the voter's job. That's why these people are up for re-election. That's why we elect our judges in Texas. If they are incompetent or senile, hopefully enough people would have noticed that the idea is that the voting system is the method of term limiting as necessary. But no, there is no competency, senility, or any of the above tests for judges. And I will just say, that's certainly a blessing to a lot of people on the bench in San Antonio right now.
Okay, we will.
We have no
move along.
Republicans on the bench in San Antonio, for anybody who doesn't know.
Hey, in 2018, Karen, almost every Republican except maybe that one that Tony Ann was talking about was pretty much swept out of office. So moving right along, these are all just generic questions talking about what this actually does. So on, can you give a list? And you did give a list of the propositions that are outside of the general fund limits. You might want to stress those again. And are all of these in perpetuity? Like once we do this, they're in perpetuity. So what happens then? Future tax increases? No taxpayer control? Can you just go ahead and synopsize that before I get to Caroline's questions, and then I'll catch up on everything going on in the chat?
So once these funds are created, there will be funds allocated to them forever and ever, amen. Unless perhaps the legislature shows restraint in a year that we don't have a big rainy day fund perhaps, but they will always be in existence and they will always be able to allocate funds. For example, Prop 14 towards the Texas State Parks, or Prop 7, the Texas Energy Fund. The only one that isn't in perpetuity is the broadband one, and that has the option of being extended, but that is the only one that they put a sunset on. Proposition 6, the water fund is in perpetuity. Proposition 5, the university research fund is in perpetuity, and Prop 3 is a good thing that it's in perpetuity, because that's the one that says it prohibits the imposition of a wealth or net worth tax. So some of these things we like having in perpetuity, such as, for example, Prop 1 is in perpetuity, and that's the one that adds number 36 to the Bill of Rights. So it prevents over-regulation by municipalities of private property. Did I miss a part of the question there?
No, I think you got it all.
Okay.
Of course, I'll be corrected just like you usually are. You know, people will supplement, and I'm
Oh, I'm
still
sure.
trying to catch up. But Caroline, you get to be on the hot seat for just a second. Karen, go and regroup, and we'll see if we don't have a couple of questions for you again. But I think we're almost done. Tony Ann, I'm cognizant of the time. So,
Okay, thank
Miss
you.
Caroline, has TPPF taken a position on the constitutional amendments?
No, ma'am. We are putting together some resources for stuff you might want to know going into it. But since that's a political issue, we don't come down one way or the other.
And then another question, what is the status of the Death Star in the courts, if you happen to know? Will
Yes.
it be effective now, or was a TRO granted?
Yeah, so it is going through the courts. I believe what happened is that the Houston case was upheld, so it's headed to a higher court, but I think they granted a administrative stay, so it's still going into effect basically while it's going through those courts. And there's like a private right to action included in the bill where people can sue if they were harmed by an ordinance that comes into conflict with Texas law. So that certainly is the part that everyone should be taking advantage of.
Okay, Tony Ann, I think we did it.
Wow, you incredible. Let me ask though, Caroline, I'm going to ask you a question
Yes, ma'am.
on the constitutional amendments. It seems to me I saw something come through from your website or something that gives all the constitutional amendments. And also, is there something about the laws that went into effect? Do you know is that information on your website?
Yeah, so I did try and find that earlier this morning for y'all. I could not find where that is on our website. I will try and corral that later today. I do know that we put out a really good Twitter thread about all of the bills that went into effect on September 1. But to the best of my knowledge, the constitutional amendments research paper has not yet gone out. I can send that around as soon as it does.
Okay, well, if it does, let us know, please. That'd be
Yeah.
great. Appreciate it.
I can do that.
Well,
So we are getting right there on our time. I mean, this has been incredible. The information shared. Karen, boy, you really did do your homework, I'll tell you. So thank you also. Caroline, the information you shared was very, very good. So Donna, we have 2 minutes left. Was there another question I saw, or was it just people sharing links to where they could get more information?
I made sure to share the link with the Texas Legislative Council's publication that is an analysis of all of the pros, what supporters say, what opponents say to each of the constitutional amendments. Kathy Hagler also posted something about the House Research Organization's publication. Of course, we did not put anything in from other groups that shall remain nameless because we don't talk about them anyway. But yes, and remember, guys, we did have a big win that was important to us as far as election integrity, and that was the Alan Vera Memorial Bill. So that is something that was special to us. I just thought I'd raise Alan's name one more time. For those of you who are unaware, he fought very hard to get ERIC, which obviously was an issue for most Republicans. It was defeated, and we are going to a different system. And an update on that, I was talking to the Secretary of State's office. We might not have to go to another outside system. We might be able to use resources and do it in Texas.
Well, that would be awesome. That's a great update. I'm very happy with that. And maybe the outside sources will come to us, and so that we can even improve and make us a stronger program there. So yes, thank you for bringing up Alan. He's definitely somebody we don't ever want to forget of what he's done and how we all work together with him. So ladies and gentlemen, I think there was one comment that I saw, which I think is so important. We need to educate the voters on these topics and give them information, good information like you have received today. So make sure that you send that out to people that you know, and that if they have questions, that you have links to send them where to go to learn more about these constitutional amendments. We have our election is in November. If I'm not mistaken, it's on the 7th. Early voting, I think, starts in October. Was it the 23rd? Am I correct? I didn't write that down, but we need to, I will have that at our next call to make sure that we get people out to vote. People don't tend to do this. And I think what was very interesting for me to find out today, I didn't realize that the county, i.e. El Paso or the county Galveston, has to approve those constitutional amendments that are pertaining to them. Besides the voters, the Texas, they have to have their counties. So that's very informative. But that was something new for me to learn today. But it's up to us to get the voters out. It's up to us to help educate. I look forward to having you all back on the call. We'll have September 28th. We don't have the speaker yet, but you will find out through my TAD Talks. Thank you all for everything that you do. And I think that we'll be having a special session, according to Steve Ministeri from last night. That special session will start up, and we will probably focus on that because that's what we're about. It is about this legislation and education. And so if it has election integrity, or if it has something to do with education, we want to make sure you know firsthand from these calls. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Caroline, man, you guys were awesome. Thank you so much. Yes, I agree. Thank you. Thank you. And everybody have a fabulous weekend, and we hope to see you soon.